Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Polynesianized podcast. Tua Fale here from San Antonio, Texas. We have joining us for the first time
Daniel Fale, Maui Tekelangi,
all of the
whatever.
above.
Not all of the above,
All right,
just A and B.
just A and B. That's a fair point. Fair point. In the day and age we live in, all the above gets kind of sketchy after a little bit.
But the most important thing is we're straight out of the Kingdom of Tonga, and we're gonna go through this travel log facts on Facebook and see how accurate it is.
Yes. No, 100%. So today, as Danny was mentioning, we're going to walk through a Facebook page called Travel Facts. And they have some, what they say are facts about Tonga, and we'll walk through, just kind of have some commentary. We'll talk about it and then walk through it and see what our thoughts are. So the first one, Tonga boasts one of the oldest continuous civilizations in the Pacific, with archaeological evidence dating back over 3,000 years. Any initial thoughts on that statement right there?
Generally true. I think the more exact number is about 2,600, but kind
It's
of in
close enough.
generalities. But it's close enough. So I'd give this a true. But one thing is for sure, Tonga has the oldest continuous civilization monarchy in the Pacific, and that's why Tonga, all the latest evidence, even though Tongans have believed it since the beginning, is the true cradle of Polynesia.
No, and that's actually a very interesting point there, Danny. There's a lot of discussion on our TikTok videos. There's discussions going back and forth, and Masi and I did the video on the Manua Empire and the Tuipulotu Empire. Those are ideas that are floating around. In this thread, there was a lot of discussion in there. I was surprised they were bringing up Japan as a the continuous civilizations, because they're saying, hey, Japan is in the Pacific and they still have their emperor. And there was a debate down in the bottom of the thread. We won't scroll down into it, but what are your thoughts on that? Should Japan be included in this discussion as the oldest, or was there a break in their civilization's existence to this day, from the emperor to today?
Well, see, it comes down to, because the original people of Japan are the Ainu. The current Japanese people came from the mainland and slowly, island by island, pushed the Ainu, which are the original inhabitants of the Japanese
Of
islands.
the islands.
So,
Yeah, give some
yeah.
discussion on that. I wasn't aware that there was an indigenous group that were separate from the Japanese. I had just assumed that they were. Is that similar to the Okinawans? Because I do know that, like, some of the contemporary Japanese
that's
feel a little differently towards the Okinawans.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it's well known and well documented that the original people of the Japanese islands were Ainu, and the descriptions of the original Ainu people, they have kind of a bigger build. It's almost like they were part Polynesian. They had kind of a bigger build than the smaller Asian
Japanese frames.
populations that came in later. Yeah, but
Okay.
Japan is definitely in the conversation as one of the oldest continuous civilizations. If you notice, it says one of the oldest. So it's basically between Japan and Tonga. Nowhere
Is
else
what it
can
will boil
kind of
down
lay
to.
that claim. Yeah, it
Yeah.
boils down to Japan and Tonga. And you know how on Netflix they had the rehashed Shogun,
On Hulu?
the
Or are
Shogun
you
series on
Oh,
Netflix.
yes. Yes, kind of like the acting out, but a historical storyline behind it.
Yeah, it's made up. It's made up characters, but like it's kind of based on true events. No,
Yeah.
but the title of the reigning when there's no shogun, but like the chief, the strongest warlord is become known as the taiko, and it's funny
Mm.
because one of the oldest titles, talking chief titles in Pelehake is Taito,
Yeah.
and there's no agreement on the beginning of that title, but it's definitely one of the oldest and it's one of the most well respected. And you know the story about Maui Kisikisi,
Uh-huh.
how they called him Kisikisi, which means dragonfly, because apparently it's how he wore his headdress. He had this special headdress of how he wore his hair, and the whatever it was like a dragonfly. It looked like a dragonfly when he wore when Maui, the famous navigator, wore that headdress. And you know, the most similar thing that I've seen it, which makes me think that Maui must have made it to Japan and China,
Is the
is the headdress
hairstyle
that
over
the
there.
emperors wore.
Mm.
No, have you noticed those headdresses that the
Yeah, that
Chinese
flare up.
emperors wore, and it's like it flares up, and there's like two little bows that go around like that. It looks
Yeah.
like the wings of a dragonfly. And so, what makes me think is it must have been Maui Kisikisi who made it all the way there, and he wore that. It must have been gifted to him to the Japanese or Chinese emperor. He must have met the emperor and he got that and he wore that, and that's why they called him Maui Kisikisi, because his headdress looked like a dragonfly.
The
So
dragonfly.
he got he got the nickname Kisikisi, um,
Interesting.
Maui the dragonfly. So what I'm thinking is he must have also met the Taiko in Japan, and
And
then he
got
came
that
back and
title.
he created the talk with the title Taito in Tongan.
Kind of interesting. Very interesting. Because I
Yeah.
mean,
So I
there are
mean,
discussions of like descriptions of like Antarctica in some of the oral history, right? So I mean, if you're going that far,
oh yeah, yeah,
Japan is well within range. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So and yeah, that's kind of interesting. I've never heard of the Taito and the Taiko, and then also the Kisi Kisi. I never knew where that origin of
oh yeah,
that name came from, and I didn't know it was tied to dragonflies. Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
Anything else you want to
So I'm
cover on that?
yeah. So you have two of the oldest continuous civilization in the Pacific, Japan and Tonga, and I believe there was contact
With Japan?
with this title, with Japan, with the title, with the Taito title in Tonga and the Taiko title in Japan, and the fact that Maui Kisikisi was given the nickname Dragonfly because his headdress or how he dressed his hair looked like. So I wouldn't put it past them. Sometimes if there's one thing we've learned from historians and archaeologists on Polynesian history, is like they really limited what they thought our ancestors accomplished, and every time as time has gone on, the archaeological evidence and other DNA proofs have proven that they achieved a lot more than we have academics has ever given credit to. So I'd say
Yeah,
number one, true, close enough,
true. Close
not
enough.
too exact, but I'd say yeah, true.
So this is what you were referencing earlier, is this kind of that headdress deal. Interesting. Mari, make me want to visit Japan even more. I've wanted to visit Japan um, quite a bit.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of similar. Yeah, you see that headdress, but there's a certain one that goes too flared that flares out to the side.
yeah, yeah.
There's one headdress
I
that
yeah.
it's just like that, but there's two of them, and it flares out to the side, and it looks like the wings of a. But that's that it's similar to that.
Okay, Mari. All right, we'll go down here to item number 2. The Kingdom of Tonga is the only remaining monarchy in the Pacific with a rich history of royal traditions and governance. So this will, I guess, it's a similar question with Japan, because they do have an emperor, but it's kind of just like England's emperor. It's pretty much symbolic. Uh, but kingdom, they don't have a king, but
Yeah,
they have an
well,
emperor. What's your thoughts on that?
that this is exactly true. Tonga is the only remaining monarchy in the Pacific. So, all the monarchies in the entire Pacific, Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian, none of this. Tonga is the only one. Up to this day, we're still a kingdom, and yes, we still have basically the same royal family ruling Tonga since Tangaloa and Maui days. Even though the title had changed from Tangaloa to Tuitonga and then from
Mm.
Tuitonga up to the current monarchy, but basically it's in the same family.
I have a. What are your thoughts on, because the we've had some of the comments we've had on social media on some of our previous um episodes and we're going to use just Fiji as the example. Is people were we were having a discussion on Maafu and Takombao declaring himself a king, and some of the feedback from some of the viewers is you know Takombao was a self-proclaimed king of Fiji, and then Maafu never conquered all of Fiji. But the interesting thing is when you really step back, Fiji as a quote unquote nation really didn't have a unified ruler. And I guess my question is, in Polynesia specifically, not too familiar with the Melanesian countries, but what kind of nation would it be compared to? Because I mean, there didn't seem to be like a widespread. We had a lot of chiefdoms in my perspective, but like kingdoms. How many quote unquote kingdoms were in Polynesia besides something that you would just reference as a
Well,
chiefdom?
you an an interesting thing about an interesting thing about if you look at the meaning of some of the titles or king titles in neighboring islands in Polynesia or to Tonga, they don't mean supreme ruler. They kind of mean like overlord um, or like a secondary king. Like you don't get titles that prove that they're, or you have titles that are like warrior king. So they become king by conquest, not by
Inheritance
divine.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
like not like inherited divine right. And so you only see that in Tonga. And so what you get is even a lot of the installation ceremonies of these titles, when they have their kava and the protocol and stuff installing a chief of a lot of these islands that were part of the former Tongan Empire, they all have symbolism as overseers of the land. They don't own the land because theoretically the land belonged to Tonga.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that principle still exists in the Tongan constitution today. So in the Tongan constitution of today, it says all land in the kingdom belongs to the king, even though he divvies it up to noble estates and to the people and everything, and the king doesn't use it. But in theory, it all belongs to the king. And part of the reason why Tonga was able to withstand colonization by European powers was because it was more difficult. The closer you got to Tonga, the more difficult it was to own the land because theoretically it still belonged to the king. And so
Yeah.
Tupo the First, when he put that in the constitution, the current Tongan constitution, which by the way is like one of the oldest, like third oldest constitution that's still in existence today, that principle, which was inherited from Tongan um, culture and history, was that all land belonged to the king, and so it was enshrined in the Tongan constitution, and that was like a double layered protection. And if someone just stands up and tries to sell their land, it wouldn't be considered legal because they hadn't received approval from the king.
Yeah.
And if you look back at history from the Hawaiian Islands to Tahiti, Rarotonga, New Zealand,
That
even
was an
Fiji,
Achilles heel. Yeah.
the colonizers, the Europeans, would actually um, own close to 50% or over 50% of the land, and also a majority of the commerce. And once they were able to capture the economy and land, then the time would be ripe for colonization to
Mm.
enforce economic rights. Which when you talk about it, it's about fairness. And so it was fairness under European rules, and so they slowly inched their way. But when it came to Tonga, it was difficult to kind of use that method because and that's why in Tonga you can't own land; you can just lease it if you're a foreigner. And so, because theoretically it still belongs to the king, if even if you're a foreigner and you buy land, you can only lease it because ultimately it still belongs to the king, so you have to give it back once after you use it. So you kind of have this fairness where you can use the land, the king's not going to use it, but ultimately it's going to return to the king because it belongs to the king. So when you look at, that's one of the proofs that Tonga is also the cradle of the rest of the Pacific, of the Polynesian Empire, is that these sort of principles are basically Tongan principles that a lot of these far-flung islands kind of were not able um, to maintain, because they basically, it's almost like they got trimmed. The European colonizers, it's like a plant. You kind of trim the far away branches, and you but it when you try to
Get to
kill
the
the
root.
stump,
Yeah.
the root, it's hard to kill the root. And so it's easier to cut off the branches, and that's exactly what happened in the Polynesian Empire sense, is that the European colonizers were able to trim away at the branches, but when it came to the root, it was a stubborn thing, and like so, the root is still alive even though it's a stump, and it's still alive even though it's kind of lost all its branches.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of probing towards is, when we say like monarchies, especially in Polynesia, there was only one monarchy in Polynesia, right? Which is another
In
reason,
a yeah,
kind
in a sense,
yeah,
which goes back to what I was saying, like, because you could be a king in your own right on your island or certain island or stuff, but even the titles of all these far-flung islands, even up to Hawaii, like Mo'i, which meant you were a king of an island of a moku. But Mo'i, what does Mo'i means? It means a big kava. Basically, you're a big
mm,
kava plant, and you
yeah,
and
big,
and
big,
the
big
way
chief.
you got your kava was, yeah. It and you see what I mean? You're a big kava plant, because that's what Mo'i is. It means a big kava plant. and in Hawaiian. And so basically, you're the big kava plant. You've been given a big kava because that's I mean, and it's similar. It's what's so funny is that when the Europeans came to Tonga, the Tongan chiefs and kings recognized the colonization principles because basically that what Tonga had
Yeah,
been doing all these
100%.
years. And so they recognized it. They recognized this game that was playing, and so Tonga knew we couldn't, we didn't have guns and cannons and stuff, but we
But we
kind
had
of could.
politics. Yeah.
We had politics and could roll with the punches when we recognized what was trying to be accomplished because that's what Tonga did. And so back in the days when a new island was discovered, the navigator would come back to Tonga and he would be granted a kava plant and he would take that kava and plant it in the island that he came from, and that was a symbol of the king delegating authority and power over the new island that was found, and they became the inherited chiefs and guardians of the new land. So it's like colonization. It's like when the
Mm-hmm.
Europeans came to a new land and they planted their flag, the flag of Spain or the flag of France or the flag of, and they do these ceremonies. They go back and then the king of Spain or whatever makes Columbus the governor of the new
The new
islands in the
land.
Caribbean. Yeah, so it was kind of the same principles and the same way, but instead
Mm-hmm.
of taking the flag and planting the flag, you were given a kava, which represents the right to rule. You were given a kava from the king of Tonga.
No,
and
100%. And that's, yeah. Go ahead.
and so no, and so that's why you get titles like the high chiefs or kings of each of the islands in Hawaii were considered mo'i or big kava. It's like, yeah, they were given a kava from somewhere
Yeah.
to be chiefs of
No,
those places. Yeah,
exactly. And then that was the thing that, kind of stuck out to me when you look at it, and especially in the, discussions on social media, especially about Fiji, is really when you zoom out, the nation of Fiji didn't exist until England came and said, okay, we're going to carve this piece out, and now that's a country. There was never ever really a monarchy that covered all of Fiji and the Lao
yeah,
groups and everything. Is just like you're saying, this part of the tree got trimmed off and got called that. Same thing with Samoa. Samoa
yeah.
was, carved off. There
Rarotonga, yeah,
all of those. There was no quote unquote monarchy in those areas because as individual pieces, they were chiefdoms.
yeah,
That's the term I like to use. Um,
yeah,
but really, the monarch was the Tuitonga and the
yeah,
Tangaloa before that. Okay,
yeah.
awesome. Let's go. Let's see what number 3 has for us. Tonga is often referred to as the Friendly Islands, a nickname bestowed upon the archipelago by Captain James Cook during his explorations in the 18th century due to the warm hospitality of its people. Kind of context you can give about how hospitable we were to Mr. Cook?
Well, it there was definitely one thing that Captain Cook. Well, there were a couple of things. He did notice that they were very friendly. There was more. It seemed like they were more peaceful than a lot of these other Polynesian islands because there was a lot of political infighting going on all the other Polynesian islands. But when
A
Captain
lot
Cook
more
came,
structure. Yeah.
there was a lot more structure, and it was everyone kind of knew their role and their place because it's kind of the root and the branches go out. So the further you get away from the tree, of course, there's going to be a
More
little bit
chaos.
more chaos and instability. But the closer you get to the stump and the roots, the more stability there's going to be in the organization of the people. And he noticed that, and he noticed that the people were more free. But it was the beginnings. There was an undercurrent that was just starting, and that started the Civil War in Tonga just before. So Captain Cook came just before the civil wars were about to start in Tonga.
Mm.
and it was the Civil War period in Tonga that was kind of like the final nail on the coffin that kind of cut off for about 2.5 generations Tonga from the rest of the Pacific islands, especially Polynesian islands, because a lot of the islands in Tahiti, Rarotonga, Uvea, Futuna, Fiji, Samoa, they still came to the annual Polo Polo, to the Tuitonga, when Captain Cook, even though
Because he
all of the
witnessed that
islands, not all of it, he witnessed, he saw islanders from different islands, all the ones that I just
gathering
said,
there.
that came to Tonga during the well, he came during the Inasi, which is different from the first fruits. The Inasi is in July, the first fruits is in December. So the Polo Polo, or the first fruits, was more of a religious gathering, and it was towards the Tuitonga. The Inasi was more handled by the Tuihatakalaua and was kind of like more like secular tribute,
Like a
and it
taxing.
was handled by kind of like a tax to kuhau kind of thing. So the Inasi in July was what Captain Cook saw. That was more of the secular tax that all the tribute from all the islands in the region had to come and pay their tribute. But the one in December, which is Polo Polo, that was more of a religious. That was the first fruits presentation to the Tuitonga. All of that was given straight to the Tuitonga. The Inasi was actually divvied up amongst all the chiefs and villages of the in Tonga, and also the villagers that, I mean, and the islands that did come. Like they were given stuff that wasn't. Um, um, it was kind of like
Perishable.
a exchange of gifts. Like some islands were known for weaving fine mats, but they didn't really do tapa cloth. And then some islands did tapa cloth, they didn't really do fine mats. And then when the Inasi came and they came to Tonga, the Tuihatakalaua, which
Exchange.
was in charge, would exchange. This island would get a share of tapa cloth, because they don't really make tapa cloth in the islands that kind of do more tapa cloth but not weavings. They gave fine mats and stuff. So the Inasi, everyone kind of, even though the tribute came into Tonga, they still kind of shared it around, reciprocated the stuff that came in.
So it's basically like a gathering and a trading post, right? I mean, yeah, you're bringing in tribute, but it was the
It's
opportunity to
tribute,
trading.
but it was also trade, but the main, I believe the main purpose of it was to maintain relations with all the various islands.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's, I mean, even to this day, even when you're working in a company or with a group, FaceTime goes an extremely long way
It goes a
in
long way, yeah.
maintain, yeah,
Just,
and maintaining
yeah,
relationships through gifts and tribute. That's kind of, you know, you show up and you reassure my commitment to the relationship and the loyalty to, you know, to the leaders that you choose to subject yourself to.
yeah,
um
yeah.
so I mean, obviously Captain Cook at that point had to recognize this is not
So
normal.
so so I mean, he even, it's funny when Captain Cook, on one of his voyages, he finally got to meet the Tuitonga of the day, who was Pau, Tuitonga Pau, and he was floored because the first question that the king asked Captain Cook was, "What's your purpose of coming here?"
Yeah, what are you doing here?
And this, yeah, and this was like, I can't remember if it was Captain Cook's second or third voyage. It might have been the third voyage where he finally met Pau, and he was floored because in all his previous travelings all over the world, all the islands of Polynesia and Melanesia, not a single time did anyone ask him that. Like, what's his
Yeah,
purpose? Like, he just showed up and the people gathered and they traded and they, not a, it
blah
was the
blah
first
blah.
time. Yeah, it was the first time that a chief or anyone asked him what's his purpose. And
Which goes
so,
back to what you're mentioning, because we talked about this with Mussy a little bit, is that goes to show the deep rooted understanding of, you know, colonization, technology, and just saying, hey, you don't spend all this time, money, and energy just to have a good time out in the ocean.
No, and it was actually a Tongan practice that the Tu'ihataqalaua and the Tu'itonga maintained when they hadn't heard from some of these islands that they know they were connected to, be it Tahiti, be it some of the Polynesian outliers.
Go see if anything's wrong.
Like, we haven't heard from these people in about close to 100 years. We need to reestablish contact. And they would have these expeditions. They would put together these expeditions, go find out what's going wrong,
what's going
on with these people here. They haven't come to see us for a while. And so that was a practice. So the king, the Tu'itonga, obviously was thinking like exactly what you just said. Like, hey, these guys came from a faraway place. We know where all these islands are, so they must have come from beyond that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And even the word papaalangi was from the Tu'itonga, because the idea was, see, the ancient line of kings here in Tonga, they considered themselves the masters of the middle sky, or middle langi, which basically between the tropics as far as they can go in all the oceans is kind of like we're the masters
their
of this
domain.
area.
Yeah.
This domain. And so it was obvious that they came from beyond the reaches of the normal horizon that they're used to being the masters of. So to papa means to come, like to crack beyond the horizon even further. And so papalangi means to crack beyond the horizon even further, which meant beyond their little
beyond the Polynesian Empire, right? Beyond
the Polynesian
where
Empire,
they traveled consistently. Like you said, we know our backyard. These are obviously people from outside of our backyard.
And so the Tu'itonga naturally was like, what's your purpose here? Because you're not coming to reestablish
contact
connections like what we do, and you're coming from even further. So if you're not reestablishing contact, which is what we do, what are you doing here?
Yeah. No, 100%. And especially when you notice technology, right? Like, I mean, right off the bat, guarantee Pa was like, not only do we not know where you're coming from, but you're coming with some advanced technology that we aren't familiar with. So there's a threat analysis going on. Like, oh, Yahweh.
Absolutely.
What is going on here?
The two big ones were steel and guns, the gunpowder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those two things automatically, the Tu'itonga and the chiefs in Tonga. So that's kind of the undercurrent. So Tongans are naturally friendly, but what the people really didn't know was the undercurrent going on with the chiefs, because they were starting to be unsettled. It was starting to be unset a little. There were fracturings going on between a lot of the high chiefs here in Tonga. And so Ulukalala, who was the governor or Tu'ihapai at the time, he was considering, like, do we take these guns by force, or do we, because we know what's coming, like we could already feel like
there's shifting
there's a bad times coming ahead, there's going to be a storm coming. Do we take these guns by force? But I guess Captain Cook came and they were friendly, and the locals reciprocated it back. So they didn't do anything, but it had definitely crossed Ulukalala's mind, as we know from the stories from William Mariner, that Ulukalala was thinking about it, because they knew the war was coming, and they knew we need steel and guns to help us with the war that's coming. And so but that kind of also shows how civilized Tonga was too. Like, it's a bad move politically if you do something atrocious with no good reason.
Yeah.
And so it shows that, like, despite despite what they knew what was coming, Ulukalala and the chiefs, they had enough constraint. Like we won't be in the right if we do.
Yeah.
Even
And
though, yeah,
yeah, and it's an understanding that politics is a very fragile thing, right? One
yeah,
wrong
yeah.
move and it can destroy you. Because I do, if I remember correctly, one of the concerns was if we do this and the wrong message goes back to where these Europeans are coming from, it can be very bad for us, because
Well, I
if
think
that,
that was part of it. I think that was part of it too. But I think the other part was he was also thinking locally too,
yeah,
because he's thinking locally because like if
if
we
you're
do this for
causing
no,
this trouble, yeah,
if we're causing this trouble, like it's gonna make Ulukalala is gonna lose trust amongst even his own local. You know what I
his
mean?
own people, yeah,
His own people, because like, oh look, he's causing trouble.
yeah.
You know,
You're being reckless, being a
yeah,
foolish leader. I mean, no different than
being
what we,
reckless.
a
Yeah,
lot of,
being
yeah, being
reckless.
reckless.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it was secondary, that idea, because they kind of had an idea that this was probably a probing, exploration kind of thing, and it wasn't. There's no 100% sure case that they'll come back if they did something. You know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
probably wouldn't even know where Captain Cook went. Like
Went
the
missing. It's
world
a big
wasn't
ocean out
globalized.
there.
Where they could, yeah, it's a big ocean. Like they wouldn't know. So I think that idea that what would happen to them if they came back, because like the other way is just you just get rid of them, make sure none of them go back, and that's gone. So it
Yeah.
was more local reasons of not wanting to appear to be reckless, and
Mm,
Captain Cook and them didn't provide any excuse, so they couldn't. Yeah.
mm.
So, but I would definitely say that, and it's funny because everyone knows that you know customer service in Tonga is not the best. We're not known in Tonga for customer service, but it's one of those things like you know um, you 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 pay me to serve you. I won't do a good job, but if you're a guest in my home, I'll treat you like a king. And
Yeah.
so they knew that these guys were visiting. They were Captain Cook and them were nice, and they treated them like kings visiting um, our home. And so that's that's the kind of the scenario on that, because uh, you try and catch a flight or ferry, inter-island ferry to the outer islands, you won't get the best customer service that you get on other places.
Yeah.
But yeah, true. Tonga was named the Friendly Islands, and for good reason. So yeah, number three, true. It is a
Gets
fact.
the gets a passing mark. All
Yeah.
right. Number 4. Tongan, the official language of the country, is one of the few Polynesian languages that still uses the original glottal stop, or the whakaua, inherited from Proto-Polynesian. Is that true? We're the only ones that use the whakaua?
No, there's still other countries that use well is one of the few Polynesian languages. The 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 glottal stop is actually its own letter. It's
Yeah.
considered its own letter, and
Out of the 18 letters. So it's one of the 18 letters. How many letters are in the Tongan alphabet?
16.
I think it's 16. Okay. So
Yeah,
it's its own letter, the last letter, right?
it's the last letter. It's the last letter. So if you look at a Tongan English dictionary, you have all the letters up to V, and then after V is Whakaua.
Mm,
But when you pronounce V in Tongan use, it's Va. So Va Whakaua. So Whakaua is actually it's a letter. No, it's interesting because there was a there was this discussion on a uh, Hawaiian podcast where had off to this professor at the University of Hawaii. I think Hilo campus. I'm not sure, and I forget the name of the professor. But he was saying like it's time to get rid of the glottal stop and the macron over the letter when it
over the
symbolizes
vowels.
over the vowels when it's a double vowel. So the macron over the double vowel, it's just to save writing space. Instead of putting double O or double A or double E, you just put one E and the macron on top, and that means it's a double letter. But the glottal stop, he was saying like we don't need that, but if you take that away, there's words that will have different meanings if you take the glottal stop away, but it's spelt the same way as something else. And that's why you know that the glottal stop is actually a letter. And so I was just saying like the you could do away with the macron. That's just
space saver.
It's just a space saver. But you can't do away with the glottal stop because it's an actual letter. And so to take a letter out of a word, you're going to change the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
And
so they're making the mistake of thinking it's a punctuation rather than saying this is a letter.
Yes. And so this point might get, Tonga still has it, and I think that the other islands still have it, but they're making the mistake because they think it's just punctuation. They think it's just punctuation, but it's an actual letter. And so yes, Tonga does maintain it, but just because some of the other islands don't use it in like writing anymore, but when they pronounce the word, they still pronounce it with the glottal stop. And so like
it's obviously important, right?
Yeah. So even though I guess it's true we do maintain it, but the fact that some of the other islands in Polynesia don't use it in their writing anymore doesn't mean that it's been written off. But it's almost like they're shooting themselves in the foot and they don't realize it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I was going to say, is it true that I heard that the university in Tonga was also suggesting taking the N off and making certain changes similar to that?
Oh, it was just one of the Tonga High ex-students exploring new ideas, because
is that how we're going to say it? Just exploring ideas?
Well, aren't universities supposed to explore with new ideas? And he was just commenting on like how, to save space and, when you write, when everybody shortens writing on text and everything, just a lot of them don't do the vowels, so they don't do the vowels just to be short. And you kind of, it's almost going back to like, Paleo Hebrew, because in ancient Hebrew they just did the consonants and they didn't write the vowels in, and then you have to
assume.
You have to assume what the vowels are. But a lot of the translations of the Bible, it causes problems because you can have the same consonants, but if you change different vowels in between,
different word, different meaning.
Word. Yeah. And so he was just saying maybe Tonga should go into that because it's modernizing our language. It was just hilarious, and it was like it went
causing
viral
waves.
And everyone's like causing waves. And I heard that the Ministry of Education they had a Facebook page that was like promoting it, and they were told to take it down. They were told to take it down because
just when there's a local viral move,
Yeah. But I mean, hey, it was thought-provoking, something to think about. But I don't think it's I don't agree with it. And it's almost as laughable as like some of these neighboring Polynesian islands, like taking the glottal stop out of their alphabet is like you take it out when you write it, but you still pronounce it. It makes no sense. And if
Yeah,
you take it out when you write it, it's going to be less effective when you teach it to your youth. And if all the islands in Polynesia are trying to preserve our language, preserve, and then after that, we're going to like throw the glottal stop out the window. It's like,
just to save some space where the paper doesn't matter anymore. Everything's digital. So who cares about
yeah.
saving the space?
And it's almost like going against, it's like they're contradicting themselves and they don't know it. We want to preserve our language, and then after that they do something that's going to take away from the language.
Exactly. And unfortunately, that seems to be a very common trend, especially
And so
in this
even though,
new academic space.
so I would say it, yes, it is true. Tongan, we do maintain the glottal stop, so it is true. But it's sad that the other Polynesian islands are doing away with it. So this point is true, and it's
Sadly
too
true.
bad. It's sadly true that we're the only ones maintaining the glottal stop when all of the Polynesian islands should be maintaining the glottal stop in their language in its written form, even though orally they
Yeah,
still, yeah,
maintain it. But yeah,
they
I mean,
maintain it.
because when you're speaking orally, you're still inserting it, right? And you have to know when to and when not to insert it when you're speaking.
Yeah.
So, okay, 10-4. Number 5, traditional Tongan society is matrilineal with inheritance and lineage traced through the mother's line. I think that's like a 50-50 there. What your
No, it's it's no, it's this is false. And it's false because inheritance is through uh, the father's line. It's patrilineal. So you inherit what is your father's. You do not inherit what is your mother's unless your mother was the oldest and had no younger brothers,
mhm,
or if she was an only child. So in Tongan culture and even under current law, you can inherit what is your mother's if there's no legal male heir. So that's why it's. But to say that it's matrilineal is not true.
correct. No, and I agree that inheritance part, obviously it's patriarchal, right?
Yes.
That's the preferred route, and that's always been the case. Where I was saying is 50-50 is the lineage can be, I mean, that's an important part of your lineage is who your mother is, right? Doesn't that have a
Yes.
significant impact on, someone quote unquote being of a higher lineage will sometimes fall
Yes.
to who your mother comes from.
Yes. And so that's more of a
Hmm.
um, social aspect of Tongan society, where you have the fahu system. So the fahu system will always be traced through the female line, especially when you get going to fahu loa, which means the extended family fahu, and it can go back to generations. For example, in our family, we been maintaining fahu loa for like up to 7 generations. So that's like, and between 250 and 275 years,
Hmm.
we've been maintaining the fahu loa of our family, and and that's traced from female to female to female to female to female to female. And the fahu has a very important place of honor in social extended family gatherings, and has very high rank. And so I think the best way to explain it is that Tongan society is patrilineal, but with um, high regards and station for matrilineal descent, also in
Mhm.
social aspects, but in political and inheritance, it's all patrilocal,
Yeah.
patrilineal, and patrilocal. Patrilocal means um, when you have an extended family gathering, it's held on the male line, family land or residence.
Okay. Not
So
100%
I'd give this a false because the first part says Tongan society is
inheritance.
matrilineal, which is not true. But it is true in the sense that, and that's why you said it was 50-50, is that in Tongan society, um, the rank of the mother is very important in social aspects of ceremony and protocol in the extended family functions.
Okay. Perfect. I don't have any other comments there for number 6. I think this one will be an interesting conversation here. So, kava, a
Yeah.
ceremonial drink made from the root of the Piper methyscium plant, holds significant cultural and social importance in Tonga, often consumed during formal ceremonies and social gatherings. I don't really have any specific issues there. You have anything in there
Yeah,
that you
I
kind of say,
no, this is very true. And an interesting thing about kava is that um, the plant in and of itself is just a plant, and it has different names depending on which island that you go throughout Micronesia and Melanesia. Throughout Polynesia, it's all
consistent?
derivatives of kava, yeah, ava or awa or kava, and so. But what's interesting is that the the symbolic use of it is what gives the kava plant its 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 meaning, and that's a fully Tongan construct. Its inclusion in formal ceremonies and social gatherings, and its use in all these different protocols is 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 100% a Tongan construct, and that's kind of what makes kava special is the fact that it's used as a ceremonial drink. And like I mentioned before, when a new island was found, they had to come back to the king, the Tuitonga, the king of Tonga, and receive a kava, and that was symbolic of his having the authority and rights to the new found land, and all the other ceremonies and significance about the kava plant in political and social gatherings is all from this idea of having the authority over land or over people or in
Yeah.
politics, and and so that aspect of kava um, has given it its significance and its meaningful value that the word kava has stuck. And so
Consistently across Polynesia.
yeah, and so when foreign contact has happened, even though all these other different islands in Micronesia and Melanesia um, have their own words for the same plant, but the idea of this plant as kava with its ceremonial meaning is the word that Europeans or Westerners have held on to call this plant. And
Mm,
so it's interesting now that kava is becoming more and more exported and consumed by Americans and Europeans and stuff. But the name kava is the name that's kind of just morphed and used. And so basically, the word kava is another contribution to that the Tongan language has to English.
Yeah. And it's probably driven by the fact, like you're saying, because it's so consistently used over a larger space in the Pacific, that would you
Yeah,
one would say that's the most dominant name for it. So that's what we go with, right? If the more people in
yeah,
more
yeah,
locations that are using it. And I think it also, now that we're having this conversation, it makes sense that basically, like you're saying, kava was given its significance as part of the Tongan culture. That's the unique identifier, right? You go identify the island, you come back. The symbolism and the
yes,
singularity of giving the kava is that's how you conduct yourself on your island. This is the pattern. And then also when you bring your tribute, what are you supposed to bring with your tribute? If you have the kava plant, and if you're hosting, if someone were to come and visit you, it seems to be kind of like,
mm,
this is how you identify and single yourself out. Like, this is how we behave as a civilization, and this is how I will recognize you're coming from the right origins, quote spoke,
yeah,
or you've been directed correctly, is you have the plant and you know how to properly use it. Would that be a fair description?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I really didn't have any real issues
yeah.
with that description of it. It seems pretty
Yeah, yeah,
straightforward.
yeah. It's the whole ceremonial and protocol around the kava that gives it significant, and it becomes the dominant.
Okay. 10-4.
So we're doing pretty good. Most of them are true, except for that one that I've given it a false. Yeah,
Yeah, the matrilineal. Number 7, Tongan tattooing, known as tatau, is a revered cultural practice that symbolizes identity, status, and heritage. Intricate patterns and motifs are used to adorn the body, often showcasing a person's lineage and achievements. I don't know a lot of detail into that, as to that practice in Tonga. I've seen a lot of videos on how Samoa
yeah. So
seems to express some of these ideas.
yeah, it is true. Tongan tattooing, though, um, had fallen out of practice when Tupo the First kind of Christianized all of Tonga. And so you did have a lot of the older chiefs at Tupo the First, who is the first constitutional monarch of Tonga, that had a lot of these tattoos. But after they became Christian, a lot of the tattooing tradition of Tonga was done away with. But Samoa still maintained their tattooing. But even though because of Christianity, tattooing was kind of halted, but it is true. And like I said, there's three words that are Tongan contributions to the English language. It's tatau, which is tattoo, kava, and tapu.
Mhm.
So those three words are all Tongan in origin and are Tongan contributions to the English language.
Yeah, 100%. No issues there. It sounds like number 8. This one is going to be a fun one because, I mean, the last 2.5 months for Polynesians in general, but um, despite its small population, Tonga has produced a remarkable number of world class athletes, particularly in rugby union and rugby league, earning international acclaim for their strength and skill on the field. Any thoughts, Danny?
I saw there's a study that was done by, I believe it was a German study, where they went around the world and they measured they measured body size and mass of basically all the ethnic groups and countries in the world. And on average, height bone structure and mass, the Tongans and Tongans were slightly bigger, but Tongans and Samoans are like basically the biggest people on the planet. And
Ethnic
according to the
groups.
words
Yeah.
of, yeah, according to the words of the those who did these Germans who were gathering the data, they said like compared to the averages of the rest of the world, like Tongans and Samoans are giants with their average height and body mass and bone structure, and so it's no surprise that Tonga is has a lot of standout athletes in contact sports like rugby union, rugby league, and you can tell that this is from a British / New Zealand / Australia perspective,
For
because
the rugby.
for rugby union and rugby league, because in America all the Tongans are known as good NFL players. Um, there's recently a few starting to get into basketball. You know, Steve Adams. Everyone in the
Yeah.
world knows that Steve Adams is uh,
NBA
Tongan
player.
Tongan NBA player, and it's so funny. Like um, when I when Steve Adams finished his rookie contract, and then there were rumors going on ESPN that he was negotiating um, uh, a big money contract, and everyone was like listening for like days and days and days, like what was going to happen and what was the amount going to be. And then he did a post on his Twitter, which is X now, saying horsepower. And then I was like, oh, he signed a deal. It must have been like 100 million or something. And then 2 hours later, only Polynesian Pacific Islanders will get that joke when Steve Adams posted horsepower. And then when I saw it, it was like, he must have signed the deal. And then
Yeah.
about 2.5 hours later, I
ESPN
turn
or
on
someone
ESPN and it
release.
says that
Yeah.
Steve. They said Steve Adams. They're not sure on the details, but apparently he's
Close
signed
the
a
deal.
new deal, and it came out to be that $100 million contract with
Speaking,
Oklahoma City.
this is a little bit of a sidebar, but have you been following the horse frenzy that's kind of going on online? I've been seeing like all kinds of like videos on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram of like people trying horse for the first time.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them,
Dude.
and
And
it's just funny. It's all like horse and coconut cream.
yeah, and it's all positive.
Yeah,
I haven't seen a single one where they're like, this tastes bad. And I've seen like Mikos here in the Americas, Palangis. I've seen, other Polynesians like the Samoans and the Maoris and stuff, everybody trying it for the first time. And they're all like,
yeah. I've been seeing those viral videos, and like it's so funny because like Tongans are known, and that's why they say horsepower, because Tongans like to eat horse meat, but it has to be prepared in a certain way. Tongans get picky with their
yes.
meat. Like if it's not prepared this certain way, they don't like horse meat. It has to be shredded and slowly cooked with coconut cream before they'll eat it. If it's cooked
With
any
a
other
little
way,
bit
they
of
don't like
curry.
it. A little bit of curry helps, and onion onion and
Yes.
garlic.
I'm gonna
But it's so
search
funny,
here.
like
Oh, keep going while I
all the
look up the
Samoans and
video.
Maoris that eat it now, they're like all the Maoris and Samoans that have tried it, like they're like, oh, this is actually good, and they like eat the whole thing.
No, keep
That was
going,
just
keep
so
going.
funny when Steve Adams was like horsepower, and I was like, oh, he signed it. He signed the deal. Just to mention a few other sports, Tonga's done well in boxing. Tonga has a silver medal in the 1996 Olympics by a Wolfgram. David Tua. Well, every Samoan has a little bit of Tongan. Every Tongan has a little bit of Samoan. But like a lot of the contact sports, Valerie Adams, even though she represented New Zealand. Steve Adams' sister, yeah.
No, and I think what the study is really trying to highlight here is the average size, right? And why that's so unique. Because in larger populations, you'll get really, really large people and then really, really small people. It's the consistency. Yeah. And that's really what makes, the Tongan and the Polynesians in general so unique. It's the consistency of the recipe.
Yeah.
Right? It's on average, you're producing large human beings who can move very quickly, typically have good coordination. And for me, and just some of the sports and playing against different groups of people, there is a different mentality and like commitment to a team when it clicks that you will get out of, kind of similar of what you're talking about on customer service, right? It's if you have your typical Polynesian athlete, they're just kind of like, whatever, I'll come out, make the tackles as needed. But if you can tap into them to like really get that mentality flowing, and it's true about all human beings in general, that if you can kind of inspire them, but there is a type of like, I want to call it mentality, but it's really a type of relationship that when you can tap that into the Polynesians, I've experienced some very unique types of culture when you have a Polynesian on the team and the level of commitment, and then you add in the size, the speed, it's a very, very dynamic collection of not just physical abilities, but really the mental and the emotional commitment that just kind of puts it into overdrive. And that's really an X factor from my perspective from Polynesian athletes. Number 9. Tonga is prone to natural disasters, including cyclones, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. That's especially that last one as of late. Despite these challenges, the Tongan people have demonstrated resilience and unity in rebuilding your communities. I think you're uniquely qualified in this situation to give some in-depth thoughts on that one.
Oh yeah, I remember it like yesterday when the volcano erupted. And it was funny because like for about a couple minutes before it erupted, there was like this very low rumble, like I could hear this very low rumble sound. And it was so funny because I was talking to Faleme here in this room. We're on the second level of the house in Longlong, and on the second story end. We were talking in this room, and then like I was hearing this rumbling, and she was talking to me, but I wasn't paying attention. I heard this like
you're distracted by
very low rumble. And you know how like women can't hear the low frequencies like the men do? So like I could hear it clearly, and it was surprisingly loud. And I was like, wait, mate, can you just like hold on, be quiet for a second?
Yeah.
And then she's like quiet, and I was like, do you hear that? Yeah. And then she's like, no, I don't hear anything. But I've played this kind of joke on my wife, like since we've been married. Like sometimes she'll be talking away, and I was like, wait, can you be quiet for a second? And then when she's quiet and she's like, what am I waiting for? I was like, no, I just want some peace and quiet. And so when I said, wait, be quiet, I hear something, she's like, are you pulling my leg?
Take you seriously? Yeah,
just teasing me. I was like, no, I seriously hear something. And then there was a first bang. It was bang, like real loud. It was like an explosion.
Mm-hmm.
It was an explosion. And then like, so after that first explosion, we both kind of looked out. It looked like it sounded like it was an explosion not too far away, like just maybe down the road or something.
Mm.
And then we both kind of looked out, and I was like, I think that was the volcano, because there's been smoke coming out of the volcano for a couple of months at that time. And she goes, no, it sounds like just something down the road a bit. And I was like, while we're discussing that, and then a big explosion happens, and you feel like this sonic boom, like even the drapes were like went like, like when they're hanging like this, and then the sonic
Yeah.
boom comes, and then the drapes kind of like move like this, and you feel like this gush of wind or something. It was
Mhm.
like the sonic boom of the explosion. And then you had ringing in your ears, like when you
From the
are
pressure.
in the airplane or something. And like, and then I was like, it was so funny because Manu and Tuaval were making a umu outside in the at the Ngoto Umu,
Mm.
the underground oven shed outside. Yeah, they both ran inside because they were like scared, and then they were like, "What do you think happened?" And I said, "I think it's the volcano." And they said, "How do you know? Why do you think it's the volcano?" It was like, that was just so loud and so violent, like, and so I said, if it is the volcano, if we walk outside, there should be a plume going overhead. So we walk outside just as the plume was going over Nuku'alofa, and we see it, and it's going as fast as a jet, like this dark
Wow.
black suit of the plume just going by. And then in a matter of about 40 minutes, like, it was getting dark, but it's like 4 in the afternoon. The sun's still overhead. And then like we all decided to pack up the car, get a few things, and then we went to they have a house in Tofoa up that's kind of high elevated inland in Tofoa, and so we ended up going to Tofoa. And on our way to Tofoa, it's like not even 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It should be daylight, but it's as dark as night. It's like
Wow.
the ash was so thick overhead, like the sun couldn't penetrate. And it was like that for about 24 hours. And then the 2 days after that, the sun would come through, but it was still thick enough where it's like, how it's kind of hazy, and you can still see with the sunlight early morning and late evening, and everything's kind of hazy. It was like that for the next 2 days before
Wow.
it kind of
That's how much material is in the
cleared
air.
out. And then even though you could still like still see the haze on the fourth, fifth, the rift for about a week, and then it was light again, but like it was raining sand. Like there were couple inches of sand covering, and ash covering the entire Tongatapu. It looked like the pictures, the aerial pictures that I've seen of, and just being here, like it looked like it had been destroyed.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so
and it,
they're saying that like the amount of energy that was released by the volcano, which is it's about 60 kilometers northwest of Tongatapu. They said the amount of energy that was released was enough for like 500 Hiroshimas.
I had remembered you called on to the whole group, the family messenger, and then
Yeah,
in the middle of the call it just cut off, right? And that was kind of
yeah,
creepy, where it's like, holy smokes, is
yeah.
Tonga still even on the map anymore? Like, what in the world just happened? And then it was like that for like 5 days where you didn't hear anything, and you're just like, what in the world has happened here? So that was tough. Not not a big fan of those type of experiences, but
So yeah, true,
yeah.
true. Tonga is very prone to natural disasters. And the first Category 5 to hit Tonga in 2019 was Hurricane Gita. I was here too. Man, I've never seen a hurricane wind so strong that the coconut trees, when you get these huge gusts of wind, it would bend like these coconut trees almost at a 90-degree angle perpendicular to the ground.
Wow.
You'd get like these huge gushes. It would be swinging like this, and then you'd get a gust of wind, and it would be like, and then go back like this. Like
That's
Quito was
crazy.
a crazy. It was.
And just before we go to the next one, which is also going to be a really cool number 10 is pretty awesome, but this, hundreds of Hiroshimas and what was the casualty? 3?
3.
That's miraculous. You can't tell me that isn't, God-given blessing right there. That's just miraculous.
Yeah. Well, Tonga had a few tsunamis before, and so the government had done with all government ministries and schools to do like tsunami drills to go inland. So I think that helped.
That played a big role. All right, next one, number 10. Tonga is home to numerous sacred sites and ancient monuments, including the Ha'amonga Maui, a massive stone trilithon believed to have been constructed in the 13th century as a royal landmark and calendar. What are your any specific spots there, Danny, you want to drill into? I mean, I think overall that the idea is true. Not sure about the timing.
I'd say it is true, but as Dad's research has done and what he believes, it's way before the 13th century. He believes it's more back to the time of Maui and the Tangaloa period, which I tend to agree. So it is the Ha'amonga Maui, the Trilithon of Maui, is it's the reason why they think that the Ha'amonga was kind of towards that time period that they're listing is because they didn't think that Tongan society was complex or big enough to build it. But if you look at some of the recent articles of findings that I kind of nudged academics to look into the LiDAR scanning of Tonga Tapu because of all the monuments and land and forts and everything, it's changed the thinking of all the academics to push back the time period of when they thought Tonga was just small little chiefdoms and fishing villages to actually accept that there were more complex and larger populations than previously believed. So I think this needs to be updated. The travel facts are not caught up to the latest facts.
Yeah, and I think that's really what makes it interesting in some of these finding is, and I find it interesting that they use the term like urbanization to describe the settlements that they're scanning and they're finding.
Yeah, because the amount of earthworks that were done could not be done by like small fishing villages. You had to have large populations together in one spot to do that. And so and so like a lot of Dad's other work, this is proving and the oral histories that Dad is kind of steel manned with more evidence from his research is that the Tongan Empire and Tongan society and Polynesian societies were bigger and more complex than previously accepted by academics.
And this is kind of tied back to, point number 1 on why we say between Tonga and Japan on the longevity, because you
Yeah.
know, it seems like the more they dig into the Tongan civilization and ruins, things don't get younger, they get older. It's like the more you prod at it,
Yeah.
the timelines keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. So yeah, I mean,
And
and go
so
ahead.
that's why I agree with um Dad's hypothesis, and what he believes, that the Ha'amonga is not from the 13th century, but because the 13th century is like in the middle of the Tuitonga period, classical period. It's all the way to pre-Tuitonga during the Tangaloa and Maui period was when the Ha'amonga was built.
Yeah. I'm gonna add, let me see here. I think it's just nice to kind of reference it here and just kind of mention, you know, the Ha'amonga as was being mentioned here. It's right here on the eastern portion of the island.
Yeah.
And right there.
Yeah.
And it looks like these paths, I think these were
Those
cleared out
pathways
to kind
were,
of give the sun's path or something like that.
yeah, it points directly to the double V on top of the Ha'amonga, that points to exactly where the sun rises, um, when it rises on the spring and autumn equinox, or the equator, and also on the Tropic of Cancer on the in the north, and it also marks um, where the sun rises on the longest day of the year, and also when the sun's directly over Tonga.
And if I understand correctly, there is a earthwork that was like a Ha'amonga or functioned similar to the Ha'amonga in this area, somewhere around here or closer to Kolonga, maybe.
No, it's closer to, it's in the Navtoka area,
Okay.
just above Navtoka,
Oh,
on the coastline to the left. Go
okay.
left.
So it's on the
That's
coastline. It's
Kolonga.
it's not it's not on the inland. For some reason, I thought it was inland more, but it's more towards Navtoka
No, yeah, it's more Navtoka, but inland, because there's a huge rise up in the land. It's right where the marker is, around that area where the marker is,
right
where it
here.
was before. But it's in, no, no,
Okay.
no, right outside of the settlement of the village.
Okay. So out in here somewhere.
It's like um uh um yeah, that area.
This looks like it's elevated from here. It's coming up.
No, it's to
Interesting.
the right, where it's to the right, where you first circled.
Right here.
No, up more. Yeah, that area.
So just
Higher
outside
up,
of the
higher up.
town.
Yeah, up more towards that wooded area where you first. Yeah,
Right
it's
here.
around. I can't remember exactly, but it's just beyond the village.
Okay.
Haven't been there in a while.
And then obviously, I think the one that um I think the one that's referenced in that study we were looking at is in Toloa. Was it in the Toloa area that they did the majority of the detailed scans?
No, it's in Fuamotu,
Oh, by the airport?
just outside of the airport.
On
On
Tongatapu.
Tongatapu, I think there's about 18,000 mounds.
Okay. There we go. All right. Let's go back to our facts here. We're on number 11. Tongan artisans are known for their exquisite craftsmanship, creating intricate woven mats, tapa cloth, and wood carvings that reflect the cultural heritage and traditions of the islands. I don't see anything there in specific. No issues there. Anything you want to drive into that?
Nah,
Anything? Nah, that's pretty
yeah,
straightforward.
it's very straightforward, very true. Some of the best find mats. There's different what non-Polynesians need to know is that there's like different types of mats. You have your rough um, mats that for everyday use, and then you have your house mats. So your rough mats can be used outside, inside. In Tongan, they're called papa. Then you
That's
have
what I was
your
gonna say. Is Papa
fala,
is
which
what I
are
was thinking.
basically, and then fala is like your house mats, and then you have your fine mats that can also be used for special occasions as a mat or sometimes as a cloth. And then,
Mm.
of course, tapa cloth. Actually, I think the word tapa cloth in English is also Polynesian, another contribution to Polynesian for bark cloth. It's called tapa. And yeah, there's a lot of wood carvings, very good wood carvers in Tonga, and and Tonga is, I think, produces most of the tapa cloth in the traditional tapa cloth in the world right now, more than any other Polynesian or Pacific island in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a women form village groups to make tapa cloth every week of the year. So tapa cloth is a big
Yeah.
um, export from the Tongans living in Tonga to Tongan expatriates who still use it in ceremonies, even though they live overseas, like weddings and birthdays and funerals.
Yeah. And kind of like you're saying, it's kind of like some of these things are massive, right? I mean,
Yeah.
almost like half a
So
football field or even bigger sometimes. I've seen one photo of
yeah,
one that
you
was
get
just like, I swear, longer than a football field.
yeah. So half a football field is a launima, and then a full football field is, well, it, it's called a tefuhi. So a tefuhi is anywhere between 100 and 110 meters, and then lau nima is anywhere from 50 to 55 meters long.
Hmm, interesting. Okay.
So Tonga is the only island that still makes the lau nima and lau tefuhi sized tapa cloth.
On a large scale, right? All right, next one. This one's hilarious. The Tongan feast known as whakapare. I don't know if that something I don't know about a certain feast like that, but is cherished tradition that celebrates important milestones such as weddings, funerals, and births. It is a time for family and friends to come together, share food, and honor their cultural heritage. The definition of whakapale for me is not that, but I don't know if I'm missing anything of some kind of feast that I'm not aware of for that.
Yeah, I don't know where they got this from, but I'm not sure what to make of this, but I'm gonna say it's false. There is no such thing as
A whakapale
a
feast.
gathering, milestone gathering for weddings and funerals. Whakapare means to
Yeah, when there's a
you reward performers because of excellence in their dancing skill.
performance. Yeah.
And
Typically in
so,
monetary
yeah,
form, right? Not a feast.
well, that's kind of in Yeah, frapale means to give. Well, it's been money since money has become
Yeah,
more.
convenient.
Yeah, but it used to be like tapa cloth or mats or other gifts
Yeah,
like
something
that
of
while the
value.
performance is going on, and you'd go and lay it before them. Yeah, something of value. And then when money became more it's accessible and transport all the values of money or the functions of money, and you know and instead of putting it on the floor in front of them like they would have done a
Traditionally.
mat or a piece of cloth or something, you just go on. Yeah, so but weddings and funerals and births are usually called gatherings or katoanga. And so number 12 needs to be
Adjusted.
corrected, updated, adjusted.
Depending on what they were
So
trying to
we'll
say.
give it a false. Yeah.
Oh, this one. I'm interested to see your take on this. Um, because I'm not quite sure what they're trying to achieve here with this definition or the concept they're trying to express here. The concept of fahu, like we discussed, um, in our matrilineal discussion on your lineage, right? Or reciprocity. I've never seen that description. Is deeply ingrained in Tongan culture, emphasizing the importance of mutual assistance and support within the community. I mean, it's saying a whole lot of stuff that you
No, that's
can't.
not
It's
the
not that it's not that it's so on the fringe that you could say, yeah, is it technically? Yeah, but it's not hitting the mark for sure.
the fahu concept is the correct description of the fahu concept is the fahu is a position of respect and honor in family gatherings.
Hmm.
It's strictly social and in each family. So, and it's usually reserved for um, the oldest female descendant or line of an extended family holds that spot, and so they're given a certain amount of honor and respect, and that comes along with rank and gifts in social extended family functions, and that's what the concept of fahu is, and it's something that helps a patrilineal type of society still maintain uh, family relationships with the female lines.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's where I'm saying, like, some of the ideas that they're kind of like I said, they're kind of skirting around. Like, I can see a little bit of what they're trying to say by reciprocity, even though that's not the right word, right? What to me,
Yeah,
what they're trying to say is, on the formal exterior outside of the family, how you're structured, that's very, you know, patrilineal, that's governed within that. But then it's also on the internal social within the family unit. I mean, I guess you can kind of say reciprocity, but to me, it's more of giving structure and recognizing, obviously the significance of the matrilineal influence, but it's more internal and it's not external. So I'm trying to see. Yeah, I struggle. I kind of get the idea of what they're trying to say with reciprocity, but it definitely doesn't hit the mark. And then I don't know how I feel about the mutual assistance and support with the community. That's just kind of like I said, fluff words that don't have a ton of stuff to do it, but it just
Yeah, it makes me. I can't remember what um, media organization in the United States does. They give out like, how many Pinocchios do you give this political statement?
Oh
It's like, I'm
yeah.
wondering how many Pinocchios we should give this one. It's like they don't get what it is, but they know it's important, and so they're kind of like making
Just put
something
some
up as
words
they go
together.
along, and so like we'll put
I don't
some
know
word
which one's
salad
worse.
together so we can get
Yeah.
three Pinocchios on the Polynesian Ice podcast.
And this one is kind of going. I mean, I don't know if it's as bad as the Fakapale one, because I mean, I don't know. Those ones we're getting. It seems like the further we're getting down this list, the more they're stretching to try and find stuff to put in here. So number 14, music and
Yeah.
dance play a central role in Tongan culture with traditional performances featuring rhythmic drumming, chanting, and intricate movements to tell stories of love, triumph, and mythology. True, I don't have any issues there, but if you
Mm.
have any, you can give your feedback on if you found anything issues there. But I've wondered, where does the history of the Tongan drums run deep? Is that something that existed for thousands of years, or is that something
Yeah.
that's relatively new?
No. It goes back, but the type of drums is like
Modernized.
the type of drums changed, but drumming goes back to the olden days and the chanting. And and actually, the Tongan Lakalaka, or the
Hmm.
community village standing dance, has actually been declared by UNESCO as a World Heritage cultural this dance,
Is it because of its
which
age?
is it's because of how old it is, and it's like the only type of dance in the world where it gathers a whole community together, and it's a community based performance
Really?
that also highlights um, in the different positions the rank and relationships of the people that are participating in the dance, and also the poetry and history um, that a lot of the ta'anga, or the poetic lyrics of the laka laka maintain. And so a lot of ancient knowledge and history is maintained in a lot of laka laka performances.
the the one thing that I see here that is very interesting from my perspective, just in our conversation here, just kind of in general from the Tongan culture overall, is there seems to be a fascination with structure, right? Like structure is incredibly
Yeah.
important. Like we talked about Takava, right? We've identified something that
Mm.
functions as a unique identifier, and then there's a bunch of structure on how you participate in the kava ceremony, what its purpose is, the order of how things are done. Then you come to obviously the political structure, and then you go to the familial structure. Now we're talking about, like the laka laka, where you have, obviously
Mm.
highest rank in the middle, and then you're kind of staggered out with whether it's heritage or structure of quality of performance. But there's no such thing as you just show up and southwest boarding on the airplane, you pick whatever seat you want. You Tongan culture seems to be almost obsessed with structure.
Well, I wouldn't say it's just Tongan culture. It's Polynesian culture. I know probably you and a lot of the listeners are very familiar with the rock,
Yeah.
And one of the Rock's famous sayings, it sounds good because it sounds like a put down, but it's a very Polynesian slash Samoan slash Tongan way of thinking. When he used to say, "Know your role," which is
Mm-hmm.
probably something that his mother would scold him using, because that's a very
Yeah.
Polynesian way of thinking. Like, you know your role and you play your role. You stay in your lane. If you're a son or a nephew, you stay son and nephew. The son and nephew is never going to be the aunt or uncle, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know your role and you stay in your role. And so when he used to say that, I was like, man, his mom probably said that to him so many times growing up, and he uses it and it sounds good and made him famous. But I can tell the Polynesian background and type of thinking where those words came from, because like when you grow up, you're expected to understand and know your role and you stay in your lane, like, and it comes from a extended family way of thinking, like the
Mm-hmm.
son will always be the son will never be the dad, you know.
Yeah.
Know your role, listen to what dad says, and then that's it.
Well,
Listen to what the
and
auntie and
the
uncle says.
and that's the thing. And I was actually, as funny as this sounds, I was kind of sitting at the airport. I've been traveling a lot the last 3 weeks. I've been to Minneapolis, been to Ohio. I've been just traveling quite a bit, and I was sitting in the airport, and this thought was just kind of going through that and this is kind of to kind of come back to what we're talking about, and that's why I kind of made the comment on the obsession with structure, because whether it's a complex construction project or the airport, the more complex the environment, the more critical you will have to understand your role. Because imagine, with all the planes flying everywhere, right? And the captain and
Yes,
everything,
yes,
the problems happen when you
yeah,
got all this complexity going on, when somebody doesn't know their role and they go outside their role. When you go outside your role, then that's where bad things happen, because you're not where you should be. And this is the
yeah.
same thing,
It's
like,
it's 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 the beginning of a recipe for disaster.
like what's his name, the coach for the Patriots, his mantra was do your job, right? Know what your job is and do your
Yeah,
job, and don't go
yeah,
outside your job. Because why? If you go outside your job, you're going to mess up the other guy, and then nobody's doing the job that we need you to do in the position that we have you. And so I've been
yeah,
that's kind of the reason why, when you're mentioning about the laka laka and the structure and all that stuff, like, the more complex you get, the more you have to drive into the detail, stay in your role. And we often see it as, oh, from a Western perspective, which I can understand, because in the Western perspective, the ability, the mobility, and the ability to move is important. But even in Western execution of work, they agree with the Polynesian structure, which is know your role and execute your role. So yeah, just a thought there. Anything else, or we can go on to number 15? So I say this is true, pretty straightforward. This one is fun. Tongans have a deep respect for the environment and practice sustainable living techniques passed down through generations, including organic farming, fishing, and conservation efforts to protect their natural resources. Don't have any issues there. Anything to add there, Danny?
yeah. That that's true. That's true. Pretty straightforward.
In recent years, there have been renewed focus on preserving and revitalizing Tongan cultural practices, including language revitalization
Mm.
programs, heritage education initiatives, and efforts to
This
safeguard traditional
idea
knowledge
of
and oral histories.
conservation is the whole idea between the tapu system, where the concepts of tapu originated in Tonga.
Explain a little bit more on the
Can you hear
tapu
me?
concept.
So the tapu concept is, it originated as a principle of conservation. So a chief would put a tapu or make something forbidden to give it chance to revitalize
Ah,
certain resources, especially fishing resources in the lagoon of Tonga Tapu, and different parts of the island. So if a tapu was put on a certain type of fish, that meant the chief saw that it was being overfished. So it would a tapu would be put on that type of fish until the chief lifted the tapu or the forbiddenness of fishing for that type of fish. And the whole idea was around the idea of conservation. And so from that tapu or conservation concept, all other aspects of taboo and tapu um, became uniquely Tongan. And like I said earlier, uh, tapu or taboo has also been incorporated as into the English language and all the concepts and ideas that go along with it. So, despite Tonga being very small, the fact that we have taboo, tattoo, and kava as words that have been incorporated into the English language, to me, I think says a lot on the complexity and how deep the cultural significance of Tonga is and Polynesia.
yeah. No, 100%. And you know, now that you explain that, like it makes sense. You know, looking back at, you know, how tapu was used in Tonga growing up, but for some reason I never made that connection. I had always just used it primarily with the concept of like sacred, you know, and not necessarily as a
Yeah,
tool of governance to just say, hey, we're just gonna stop doing this.
conservation.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. I've
Yeah,
never had that thought.
and so the forbiddenness and the conservation idea eventually developed more into the sacredness aspects of it in terms of social and political development in Tongan society, Polynesian society.
Hmm. All right, last one. Despite modern influences, Tongans maintain a strong sense of cultural identity and pride in their heritage, reflected in their customs, traditions, and way of life, ensuring that the spirit of Tonga continues to thrive for generations to come. Pretty good, actually. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that that's generally too. Tongans are very proud to be Tongan. You can always spot a Tongan by proudly wearing their ta'avala, not just in Tonga but overseas. Um, and the fact that Tonga is still a kingdom today, and in today's world, there's a lot more stability than there was in the past. So I think Tonga is going to definitely survive into the near and medium future. And who knows, maybe uh, there are bigger things than we expect for Tonga to keep on punching above its weight.
No, I agree 100%, and I think, you know, obviously of Polynesians in general, but since, you know, that this is something that's really strong, but I think Tonga uniquely, because of this, you know, ability to maintain governance, having the monarchy and longest running civilizations. This was actually, to me, this is one of the unique things that I think Tonga can kind of provide around the world. And I'll give an example. So back in like 2013, Ethereum was still a white paper that Vitalik had kind
Mm,
of, you know, circulating. And, you know,
yeah,
Bitcoin was starting to get some momentum there. And I saw Ethereum and I was like, man, this is the technology of the future. But cryptocurrencies, but more the blockchain technology, what to me was missing a small enough group that had a global footprint, who had strong enough ties that could drive economic activity around the world, that would be like a showcase, right? A little point in case for blockchain kind of um example, right? As a case in point for blockchain and what it could provide. And so I met with two of the Ethereum founders in New York. I met with them twice. And I was really pitching Tonga hard. I was really pitching hard for this purpose, you know. And I remember talking with them, and they were looking at a couple other. One of them was a small country in Europe. I can't remember, but I was really pitching. I said, man, if you guys build something for Polynesians, and in specifically, if you want to go even smaller, Tongans, I said, you could have this group really exemplify what the blockchain could bring to the table. Because I really believe in that. Like that is something that is very special. And that also is the X factor for me for Polynesian athletes when they perform. This kind of describes it, right? It's that ability to maintain the significance of family, what connects them, that really kind of puts whatever physical attributes into like the X factor kind of thing. And like you said, I can't see anything in the short term that would stop Tonga from continuing as a civilization for thousands of years more. Who knows? Maybe something will come that could stop it, but this is my favorite out of all the things we discussed, is that because I think it encompasses everything that was true in this list. So
Yeah, I think this is true, and like I said, there's benefit in being small. Um, there's benefits of being small, and like you said, but still have a recognized enough footprint and sovereignty to act on your own and not have obstacles of global politics and stuff like that. But still, the fact that Tonga is still a kingdom and still commands a lot of respect in our part of the world and the neighboring islands, where certain types of technologies or maybe even new ways of thinking and doing business can be fostered in such a way and then duplicated later, kind of done as a pilot or test case for certain ideas before being implemented elsewhere. But I think Tonga slowly getting to a type of maturity in its new kind of democratic governance. We're not there 100%, but we're slowly getting there. And stuff like you mentioned about the blockchain, because all the possible uses of blockchain have not been explored, even though it's kind of gone down the cryptocurrency and finance stuff. But there's other possible uses that haven't been explored. That, I mean, and we're just talking one of a whole bunch of other stuff, possibilities in the future. But it's good to still be here on the rock, trying to move those things and nudge Tonga to go in that direction. It's good that the maintaining connections to the rock all the way there in San Antonio and all the other expatriates in the States and all over the globe. So this was pretty fun to go through. Happy to be here on my first appearance on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. This is pretty fun.
Yeah,
we'll do it again soon.
Once again, yes. And just to close out, we thank Travel Facts for putting together. I think if I were to give them a grade, I'd give them a B plus, because number one, I felt the overall intent seemed pretty sincere, and that to me, at the end of the day, is what matters, right? They did a sincere effort. Majority of it was pretty good. Only a couple areas, but Tonga being so small, they did pretty good for being able to narrow in and doing a good job there. And like you said,
I'll give them an A minus.
A minus. Okay,
I'll give them an
okay.
A minus. A minus.
I can't argue with that. So thank you to Travel Facts. And like you said, Danny, appreciate your time. Looking forward to it. This is fun. And just having conversations. We promise to a lot of our viewers. I know some of the comments that have come back is, you know, and Danny kind of corrected me. You know, we said we have Polynesian eyes, but a lot of times we focus a lot on Tonga. But for all intents and purposes, just to let the viewers and the listeners understand, Tonga and Polynesia are kind of synonymous in the perspective that we're coming from, because we see it as all of Polynesia was one country. So there really isn't Samoans and Tongans. We're all Polynesians. We're one group. We were one country. And though we've been cut up by the Europeans to help them govern the way they wanted to govern, but all Polynesians are just one group at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I agree with that statement. Even though it says Polynesianized, but I mean, you can't blame us. Like, I mean, sorry to all the aunties and uncles and cousins out there, but like, we're the last kingdom still standing. So we're trying to bring the true definition of Polynesia back.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And so think of it synonymous, and yeah, didn't mean to cut you off there, Danny, but yeah. I agree with that statement 100%.
I think it was good. So long until next time.
All right, catch you guys later.